The Space Marine had spoken to me, acknowledged me, as if I mattered. He called me loyal, competent. For a brief moment, I felt seen, but just as quickly, I realized the truth. I was utterly powerless, like an insect caught in a hurricane. My world was gone. Everyone I cared about, dead, imprisoned, or scattered across the galaxy. And yet, this was called a victory for the Imperium. I thought back to how the Marine had described the infected population. 60%. Not mothers, fathers, or children. Just statistics. Casualties written into a report. It sounded cold, inhuman. But then, I remembered what the genus stealers really were. The training vids from my youth came flooding back. The alien taint-twisting human DNA, turning loving parents into monsters willing to sacrifice their own children to alien masters. Whole civilizations rotting away from within until nothing human remained. And suddenly, 60% didn't sound like people anymore. It sounded like weapons, hostile agents, beings who no longer knew loyalty, love, or family. They hadn't chosen their fate. I knew that. Many probably fought against it, clinging to their humanity as it was stripped away piece by piece. But in the Imperium's eyes, it didn't matter. It could never matter, because the alternative was extinction. The Marine was right. Eliminating them wasn't cruelty. It was survival. The only choice left. Still, as I sat in that silent control room, surrounded by the remnants of my old life, I wished I didn't know the truth. I wished I was still ignorant, just another civilian, working through daily routines, never realizing the machinery of war grinding above us all. Because now I understood what it cost to keep the Imperium alive, what sacrifices were deemed acceptable, what lives were reduced to numbers in service of a greater good. And tomorrow, I knew I would wake up, return to my post, and help coordinate the communications that made all of this possible on my world and on countless others. That was my duty, my contribution to the Emperor's cause. The Marine had called me loyal. He had said my service was noted. For most Imperial citizens, recognition like that would be an honor beyond imagining, proof that their existence mattered. But for me, it felt like a curse, a burden, a knowledge I would carry for the rest of my life, no matter how heavy it became. The equipment around me hummed softly, waiting for the blackout to lift. In just 6 hours, signals would flood the channels again. I would go back to work, receiving transmissions, routing messages, amplifying signals, doing what needed to be done, no matter the cost in lives or in souls. That was the reality of being human in the 41st millennium. To serve, to obey, to sacrifice everything, even entire worlds, if it meant keeping the horrors of the galaxy at bay, because some threats were so terrible. Any price was worth paying, even the price of your own people, your own home, your own soul. Writing. The hours dragged on after the Space Marine left. The control room felt smaller somehow, as if his very presence had bent reality, leaving me in a space too fragile to contain what I'd just experienced. Outside, the war was dying down. The booming of artillery faded into distant rumbles, like thunder from a storm moving far away. But I knew the silence was a lie. The Marines were still out there, methodically sweeping through the cities of Caith Prime. Elimination teams hunting down every last infected soul. I tried not to think about what elimination really meant. I tried not to picture the faces of the people I had known, faces I might never see again. But my mind betrayed me. Mrs. Hawk, the grocer who always saved the best fruit for me. Jorik, the young tech who worked beside me for years before moving to the Hive City. Were they infected? Was their kindness genuine, or had I been blind to the alien corruption hiding behind their smiles? The questions spread like poison through my thoughts. Every memory, every act of friendship suddenly seemed suspect. How many conversations had been lies? How many moments of warmth were carefully calculated manipulations designed to spread the genestealer influence? The paranoia was suffocating. And the cruelest part? I knew this was exactly what the enemy wanted. Fear, distrust, isolation, the breakdown of every bond that made us human. A soft chime from my console shattered my spiraling thoughts. At last, a transmission. The first in 12 hours. Station Tur 7, this is Fleet Command. resume normal operations. Blackout lifted effective immediately. Standby for priority routing. The voice was calm, efficient, human, and somehow, after hearing the Marine's booming words, that professionalism was almost comforting. Just a Navy comms officer, speaking from high orbit. Business as usual, or at least as usual as things ever got in the Imperium. I activated the transmitter arrays. One by one, systems came online. Red lights blinked to amber, then green. Screens filled with data streams, routing tables, encrypted signals. Familiar hum of a living comms hub returned. But something was different. Instead of the usual chatter, civilian traffic, local business, endless bureaucratic noise, the channels now pulsed almost entirely with military transmissions, tactical reports, resource allocations, troop redeployments. Not the heartbeat of a living world, but the cold efficiency of an occupied one. Caith Prime had been saved, yet it was no longer ours. It was an Imperial asset now, controlled, managed, watched. The scale of it hit me as the traffic flowed in. Requisitions for quarantine camps big enough for hundreds of thousands, transport schedules moving detainees like cargo, casualty reports with numbers so large they barely seemed real. Entire populations erased in a single night. And then, something new. A transmission coded at a level I had never even seen before. Obsidian clearance. A term I'd only read about in training manuals, never expecting to encounter. The kind of security reserved for information that could destabilize entire sectors. The data burst through my console, bypassing my usual monitoring systems. My entire station reconfigured in seconds, connecting directly to the most secret communication networks of the Imperium. Naval intelligence, Inquisition hubs, even encrypted channels used by Space Marine chapters themselves. I wasn't just a planetary technician anymore. I had been drafted, without choice, into the core of the Imperium's war machine. The irony cut deep. By surviving the purge of my own world, by proving useful enough not to be discarded, I had earned the privilege of helping to unleash the same devastation on others. For the first time, my station wasn't just a node for civilian life. It had become part of the network that coordinated planetary purges, cleansings, genocides. And there it was, the first order through the new secure line. Coordinates for a world I had never heard of. Xerian Turs. Population data. Early reports of suspected Xenos infiltration. My fingers moved on instinct, logging the information, confirming receipt, preparing routing protocols. It was all standard procedure, just another transmission. But in my mind, I saw faces, families, ordinary lives, just like ours had been. People waking up, going to work, laughing with their children, never suspecting that their world was already marked for fire and blade. Did it matter if they knew? Would warning them change anything, or only drown their final days in terror? I sent the confirmation, logged the data, filed the reports, because that was my job now. My service to the Emperor. My small, terrible role in a galaxy where survival demanded sacrifices too vast to comprehend. And I told myself, this was duty, this was loyalty, this was what it meant to be human. Days blurred together after that. Wake, work, transmit, log, sleep for a few hours, then repeat. My life became an endless stream of encrypted voices and coded signals. Something inside me had shifted. Before, I had been a cog in a machine I didn't fully understand. Now, I knew exactly what the machine was doing. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Every data burst I relayed was a death sentence. Not always immediate, but inevitable. Sometimes the reports were clear. Confirmed infestation, commence purge operations. Other times it was subtler. Surveillance updates. Medical reports flagged for anomalies. Strange patterns in population growth. A drip feed of evidence, each piece small, but together damning. And I was the one who passed it along. My hands, my voice, my systems, helping to condemn entire worlds. The strange thing? Outwardly, nothing changed. The Navy officers who checked in with me still spoke in clipped, professional tones. The Marines who occasionally strode through my station still radiated that same terrifying aura. Everyone was doing their jobs, just like me. But in the quiet hours, When the signal slowed, the weight of it pressed down on me like a mountain. I tried to remind myself of the truth, that the Gina Stealers were a threat beyond comprehension, that every casualty report was really a victory, preventing the infection from spreading, that without sacrifices, humanity would fall. And yet, a voice inside whispered, "How much sacrifice is too much? How many worlds must burn before the Imperium admits it is losing?" The worst part was the secrecy. Civilians never heard the truth. They were told sanitized stories of noble victories, glorious defenses, blessed deliverance by the Emperor's chosen warriors. But behind those tales, the truth was raw and merciless. Planets weren't saved. They were contained, quarantined, purged. One night, a transmission came through that shook me to my core. It wasn't an order or a report. It was an intercepted civilian distress signal picked up by our long-range arrays. A fragment of desperate voices from Xerian Turs, the same world I had helped mark for further investigation. Static crackled. Screams bled through the distortion. And then a woman's voice, clear for just a moment. "Please, we are not infected. They are killing us anyway." And then silence. The Navy encryption systems scrubbed the feed, logged it, and sealed it away. To the Imperium, it was just noise, irrelevant. But to me, it was proof. Proof that not everyone being erased was truly lost. That sometimes whole populations were condemned just to be safe. I couldn't sleep after that. Her words haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her pleading voice, echoing in the darkness. "We are not infected." Doubt began to gnaw at me. For the first time, I questioned whether I was truly serving humanity, or just helping to maintain a system that crushed it. I remembered the Marine's words, the way he had praised my loyalty. Was this what loyalty meant? Blind obedience, even when your conscience screamed against it? But what choice did I have? I was a single man in a galaxy of trillions. To resist would mean death. To disobey would bring the Inquisition's gaze, and their judgment was always final. So I did what billions of others across the Imperium do every day. I buried the doubt. I silenced the voice. I kept working, because that's what survival meant. Not hope, not freedom, just endurance, carrying the unbearable weight and pretending you didn't feel it crushing you. And yet some nights, when the stars glimmered outside my viewport, I wondered, was endurance enough? Or was I already infected, in a way, not by alien DNA, but by despair? The Imperium could purge bodies. It could cleanse worlds. But who could cleanse the soul of a man who had seen too much? Time moved strangely after that. The days no longer felt separate, just one long, unbroken stretch of transmissions, data, and silence. I lost track of how many worlds passed through my console. Names I had never heard of, names I would never hear again. Each one destined to be purged, quarantined, or broken apart in the name of survival. I told myself I was just a witness, that the responsibility wasn't mine. I wasn't the one giving orders. I wasn't the one pulling the trigger. I was only relaying information. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Because without voices like mine, without stations like mine, the machine would grind to a halt. The Imperium's vast armies couldn't move without communication. And I was a link in that chain. Every confirmation, every data relay, made the killing possible. One evening, during a rare moment of quiet, I stood by the viewport and looked out at the stars. Billions of lights, scattered across an endless void. Each one a sun, each one with worlds and lives of its own. And I thought, how many of them are already doomed? How many will flicker out before anyone even knows they existed? That was the curse of knowledge. Once you understood the scale of it all, the galaxy didn't look beautiful anymore. It looked fragile, haunted, full of ghosts yet to be born. And then, something unexpected happened. A Marine returned, the same one who had spoken to me before. His armor was scarred, his presence as overwhelming as ever. He didn't speak right away. He just stood there, as if weighing whether I was even worth addressing. Finally, he said, "You are still here, still serving." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Good," he said. "Loyalty is rare. It must be remembered." And just like that, he turned and left. It was nothing, really, just a few words. But those words carved into me deeper than any blade. Loyalty must be remembered. Was that a blessing? A warning? Or a sentence? In the days that followed, I thought about those words constantly. Maybe he meant that my service would be rewarded one day. Maybe my name would be recorded in some endless archive. A note beside it, served faithfully during the Kaith Prime cleansing. Or maybe it meant that my loyalty was now branded into me, that I could never escape it, that no matter what doubts or questions I carried inside, my fate was sealed. I would serve until I died. And that service would be remembered, not because it was noble, but because it was necessary. And perhaps that was enough. The galaxy is not a place of happy endings. It is a place where survival itself is a miracle, a place where entire civilizations vanish in silence, and the only constant is war. In such a place, loyalty, blind, unwavering loyalty, may be the only thing that keeps the darkness from consuming everything. So I returned to my console. I routed the signals. I logged the data. I played my small part in the endless war. Because in the end, that's what it means to be human in the 41st millennium. Not to dream of freedom, or peace, or happiness, but to endure, to obey, to give everything you have, even when it breaks you. And maybe, just maybe, someone will remember.